Hey, welcome to another episode of the Leverage Your Podcast show. And we're going to focus on podcast guests today. And I hear this all the time. I'm guesting on podcasts, but I'm not getting the results that I've wanted, or I haven't got a lead yet from the lead magnets, and I'm not getting a lot of traction, not getting a lot of new bookings. Oh, podcast guesting doesn't work. Well, let me tell you, it does work, but it also takes way more than just booking on a show and showing up and talking about your expertise. It takes a lot more. So, today I want to help you figure out why you aren't necessarily gaining that kind of ROI that you've been hoping for. And I'm going to share some 5 levers to diagnose where you can optimize your efforts. So, the first I'm going to talk about is your mindset. So, any success, as you know, starts with your beliefs and your thoughts. So, let's check your approach to make sure that it gives you every chance that you get to make the most of your podcast interview. So, here are 4 shifts that you can take today. One is that it is not a transaction. It starts as a relationship between you and the host, but also you and the audience. So it's not a case of just booking the interview, checking in, checking out, and moving on. The second is it's not all about you and what you want from the experience, i.e., visibility or growing your e-list with your lead magnets. The host is looking to connect with you, but also provide information and serve the audience and help others. They have a mission. This is why they've started their podcast. And they are inviting you to help their audience and their community. So find out what their mission is. What is their cause? Learn more about the audience that they're serving and what's in it for them, what they need, what they want. And don't be afraid to ask questions. When you go onto a podcast, ask, you're in the green room for a little while, ask them, tell me a little bit more about your audience. What are some of their pain points? What is your mission? What do you really hope to gain from your podcast? And that will really help you, impress the host, connect with the audience, but also tailor your conversation so that it fits that audience and it's relevant. The third is it's not a sales opportunity or a pitch fest. It's one thing to seed your services and your products, and it's another to, sound like a salesman going on and on about what you sell, about the software that you're using, the features, the benefits, the price. You don't want to sound like a salesman. You're going to turn off the host, and you're also going to turn off that audience. And lastly, and this is a really big one, the results that you get from podcast guesting, it's not all about the leads and growing your e-list and sharing that lead magnet. I know it's easy to really focus on that and then look at those numbers to see what kind of ROI that you're getting from podcast guesting. But there are so many more ways to gain traction from podcast guesting. You have to think beyond the listens and beyond the leads. Think about collaborating with the host. You can do a lead magnet swap, do webinars together, referrals. I could have a whole episode on that. It's also a way to get content. So you can use that content, publish it on your website, boost your backlinks, your SEO, your organic traffic. You can use that content, this is my favorite, for reels, micro content, shorts, carousels, quotes, emails to your list. It is such an easy way to use your own expertise and that content to create more shareable micro content that attracts your ideal client, nurtures, and converts. And of course, it helps you boost your authority and your credibility to be seen as a go-to authority in your field, which of course is going to open up more doors for opportunities to be a speaker on summits, to speak on stage, for other interviews. So it really does open up doors. So thinking about those 4 shifts so that you can fast track that ROI from podcast guesting. Now, I'm going to move on to the next ones, which are a little bit more tactical and has to do with the interview itself, but even that prep work that you do even before you pitch yourself, before you book that episode to be booked on. So the next one that I want to touch upon is your talk topics. And I learned this the hard way, as you do. And I remember I had a one sheet. I used a podcast booking agency, and honestly, I wasn't really getting booked on the shows that I wanted, and I wasn't getting the kind of traction that I wanted from those episodes. And what we found is that my talk topic was so boring. It was so dull. And I was doing content marketing back then. And so it was like, I don't know, content marketing strategies that help your business grow. I mean, so boring, so vague, so run of the mill. I'm lost in the sea of everybody else. And it wasn't giving me any traction. It wasn't until I totally dialed in my talk topics and what I spoke about and how I positioned it that I then finally got booked on more shows. So I can't remember what the title was, but even this episode, right? 5 strategies that impact your podcast guesting ROI. Even that title, that tells the host, that tells the listeners exactly what they're going to gain and who it's for. They can picture that interview and how it's going to benefit them. So you want to be able to create a talk topic that piques someone's interest. It positions you as the expert. It's a way to seed your programs and your products and attract your ideal client and help others see you as the solution. And so you definitely have to look at your talk topics. So ask yourself these questions when you are crafting those talks. Is it something that your ideal client wants to hear about? Is it relevant? Will what you share help solve a problem? Because you got to think with the audience, what's in it for them? If you're like, oh, I'm talking about Facebook ads, whip-de-doo. If you're talking about how to create a Facebook ad in less time, that'll cost you less money and get you more leads. Yeah, I'm into listening to that. So you really need to think about that. Does the topic in general showcase your skills? Will it position you as an expert in the field that you want to be known for? You don't want a topic on, like, let's say I did a topic on email marketing. Sure, I know a lot about it. Sure, I help some clients with email marketing. It's not what I want to be known for. It's not my expertise. It doesn't relate to my offer. And so this kind of relates. Does your topic lead the audience to your offers? Again, is it relevant to what you do and how you serve people? So ask yourself those questions when you're crafting your talk topics. And so after the talk topics, of course, are your interview questions. These are so important for so many reasons. And I'll share a little story. So again, I've guested on a ton of podcasts, and like everybody else, I had my one sheet. I had a few different talk topics, and then the interview questions that I had on that one sheet were a couple that were kind of just about my industry in general, maybe my journey, and a couple questions were about one of the topics. A couple of the questions were about another one of the topics. So what happens is when you send that one sheet to the host and they are conducting the interview, they might have picked one of your topics, but the questions that they're going to default to are the ones that are on your one sheet. So what happens is your interview ends up being kind of random. It's not focused on your expertise. They're not asking questions that will guide the conversation in a way that you want to be positioned. with the material that you want to deliver. And it just ends up being random and like all over the place. And I've had this with clients and they're like, I feel like the conversation goes nowhere. And I get the, recording back and it goes live and I just feel like it falls flat and then, it doesn't pique interest. And even from a content repurposing perspective, when I'm, looking at that interview and trying to pull out, reels and shorts or just content in general, I'm like, yeah, it feels kind of scattered and it's not showcasing you as the expert that you are and really sharing with people how you can serve them and what you offer. And it all starts with the one sheet. Yes, the one sheet is important, but send the host interview questions like, hey, you want to pick this topic? Great. Here are the interview questions that'll make it easy for you and it will guide the conversation. And so crafting interview questions that guide the host, but allow you that opportunity to talk about your method, your program, your strategies, what you're known for. That's what you want. And the third element, and this is kind of widening it open here a little bit more to look at that big picture, is a lot of guests don't think about their funnel when they're crafting those topics, when they're crafting those interview questions. So you have to step back a little bit, look at the big picture, and be a little bit more strategic. And so with my coaching clients, we look at their key offers, paid, free, and reverse engineer them to create talks that convert, to push the listener through a journey that gets them in the pipeline and converts to clients. And you want to seed those programs that you have along the way in those talks and your successes, which I'll get to next. So you don't want to talk about any old topic that you happen to know about. You want the talk topic to get your results. You want it to push people through that funnel, what their next step is, and obviously convert to paying clients. So an important piece, and I'm going to go into the fourth strategy here, and that is looking at your call to actions. I see this all the time. So many guests, and I've had this happen on my show. I'm sure I've done it in the past, where the guests at the end of the episode don't have a call to action. They will not share anything, or they will share too many things. You can check me out on my website. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can email me here. If someone's confused or has too many options, they're not going to do any of those things. And if you send them to, oh, you can go to my website, I have this there, that here. If you scroll down, if you go to this tab, they're not going to remember any of those steps. And you want the call to action to be very clear and very concise and keep it to one thing. And you want the call to action to be relevant to your talk. Do not offer, assessment about your branding if you're talking about email marketing. It just doesn't make sense. You want your conversation to really pique that interest of the listener, of, to put salt in the wound a little bit of like what the problem is. Share share that you're the solution, and share how you can help them and give them some tips and value and strategies. But you want the next step to be something that they need, that is going to solve a problem for them, that is going to be the next quick solution. And obviously, it's going to then get them into your funnel and then convert them to leads. So make sure that your call to action is relevant, and there's just one. So you've probably heard me in this episode give a couple of little stories. Yes, stories matter. And honestly, I have struggled with this one so much over the years. I could never wrap my head around how to give stories. I'm like, I don't have any stories to give, or I don't remember what happened in the past. So I've really struggled with this. So I totally feel ya if you're like, oh my God, Lindsay, how do I bring a story into the podcast? They don't come naturally to me. But what shifted my thinking was instead of sharing just facts, tips, and strategies, think about how can you illustrate those points with a story or a case study or a result that your client had that paints a picture and puts the audience in that person's shoes where they can picture, oh, yeah, that's totally me. Oh, they used that thing and they got this result. Oh, that's amazing. I want that. So you want to think about what scenario, and you can even craft one up from, different clients that you've had. It doesn't have to be super perfect. It just needs to illustrate a point. So in my Conversations That Convert program, for instance, I strategize with my clients. Once we have their irresistible talk topics, once we have their authority boosting interview questions and their talking points mapped out, we then dig into what stories can help illustrate one of those tips or methods or a worksheet that they use that they mention in the talk. So, a quick example is when my client in the ABC program used my XYZ assessment, they had this amazing aha moment where they realized the biggest block to their success was blah, blah, blah. And from there, we did 1, 2, 3, and we were able to scale faster and they were able to get this result. Super short, super sweet. It seeds a program. It shares a problem. It shares the thing that you use that's proprietary to you to get a certain result. So it illustrates and showcases your authority. And again, seeds your program, right? And so, of course, you probably heard me in there share the Conversations That Convert program. So I seeded my program and shared what I did, and shared a result. So that leads me to sharing my Conversations That Convert program, where I help clients strategically craft 3 talk topics. You do need more than one so that you can be more appealing to hosts so that you have a talk that is relevant to their audience. But then it also gives you way more content to share out in social media. And it also is a way to share different lead magnets, and you have different aspects of your business, right? You have different parts and parcels. Just like I can talk about talks, I can share information about leveraging and repurposing. I can talk about how to track for, guesting, podcasting. So there's different areas of my business where I can create talk topics around, but they all relate to what I do and how I serve people. So what we do in this program is we go over and craft irresistible talk topics, authority boosting interview questions, ready to impress talking points, strategic call to actions, client attracting content, and memorable sound bites. And this allows my clients to get more leads, opportunities, and clients from podcast guesting. It's so much more strategic. So if that does pique your interest, go to smoothbusinessgrowth.com/guest success. And of course, reach out to me if you have any questions. So I've covered 5 strategies that will help you impact podcast guesting ROI. There are other strategies that do factor into the success of podcast guesting, so I don't want to be remiss in mentioning those. You obviously need to guest on the right shows that put you in front of the right audience. Your performance on the podcast matters, and you want to nurture the relationship that you have with the host so that you open up doors for opportunities for collaboration. And of course, you want to leverage and repurpose that content and those episodes to create micro content that showcases your authority, attracts new leads, and converts your audience into high paying clients. Those topics, though, are for another episode. But I hope you found this episode really helpful in guiding you to diagnose what you're doing right now and what areas you need to optimize to really move the needle, because podcast guesting does work. And it just takes a little bit of strategy and maybe a little bit of support. So I'm here to help you. So that is it for this week. And we will see you next week on the Leverage Your Podcast Show.